And a very happy afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Burgess back with Think and Grow Rich. And over 26 years of every day I've been reading this book. And that has been a decision. Oh yeah, we're in that chapter, aren't we? Decision part 2 coming at you today. We wrapped up the last video with tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it. And remember, we talked about how important it is for us to have firmness in our decisions, quickness and definiteness in the decisions that we make. Most people in our society today, they make conditional decisions. You know, I'll stay married if. I can love her if. I'll do this if. Oh yeah, I'm committed to that if. Committed if? There's not much commitment there. So what I want to ask you is, do you have the habit of making committed decisions, or are they conditional decisions? You know the answer. Don't shy away from it. Be honest with yourself. What I want to talk about now is a section of this particular chapter that really opened my eyes. And I think it'll open yours as well. It opened my eyes to a term that he uses. He says freedom or death on a decision. Now, you and I have made a lot of decisions today, but I don't think any of those decisions brought freedom or death based on the decision we made. Now, maybe you're in a position that it has done that for you, but I haven't been. I mean, I had to decide which shirt to wear. I had to decide whether or not to do this video. I had to decide what pants to put on. Do I want to put socks on? When I got into my underwear drawer, there was more than one pair. A decision had to be made. Now, I know most of you thinking, geez, oh, Pete, Tim, really? Well, ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, every one of those things is a decision that you have made. You've just made those decisions completely unconscious with no conscious thought. So we've done it completely out of habit. But now he wants to talk about freedom or death on a decision. He says the value of decisions depends upon the courage required to render them. I didn't have to exercise much courage to render a decision about what shirt to put on. You probably didn't have to, use a lot of courage to make the most of the decisions you've made today. He says the great decisions which served as the foundation of civilization were reached by assuming great risks, which often meant the possibility of death. Hey, think about this particular guy named Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln. Now, we're going to use examples out of the book that are old. I mean, he wrote the book in 1937. But this guy named Abraham Lincoln affected every one of us today. See, he wrote this thing called the Proclamation of Emancipation, That gave freedom to the colored people of America. He wanted to abolish slavery across the board. Now, he knew that if he rendered this decision, that particular act would turn thousands of political supporters against him. Friends against him. He knew that. But he had the courage to make the decision anyway. What about this guy named Socrates? And if you don't know who that is, look it up. That decision to drink the cup of poison rather than to compromise in his personal beliefs. What about the decision of this guy named General Robert E. Lee, who, when it came to the parting of the Union, he took up the causes of the South during the Civil War days in the United States? That decision did cost him his life. And what about 56 men who gathered in a room in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States of America, on July 4th, 1776, and 56 men signed a document which would either ensure freedom to all of the people of America and all the colonies, or it would absolutely be their death. That decision required an enormous amount of courage. Now, I had no idea what events took place that led up to the Declaration of Independence even being written or signed. However, Napoleon Hill goes into it's a short synopsis of the events that took place leading up to it. I encourage you to study the American Revolution if you wish to, find out how accurate this information is. Or just go with it. Here's what we all know for sure. 56 men did decide to sign the Declaration of Independence. And the United States is a free country, as we speak. That we know. But he says we read the history of the Revolution and falsely imagine that this guy named George Washington was the father of our country. Really, it's not how it worked. He says it's nothing short of tragedy that the writers of history have missed entirely the power which ensured the freedom of the colonies. So he wants to briefly review the events that gave birth to this power. He says the story begins on March 5th, 1770, when British soldiers were patrolling the streets of Boston. By their presence, they're openly threatening the citizens, and the citizens didn't like this. So the colony's rep resented these armed men being there. So they begin to throw stones at them. They begin to throw rocks at them to express their resentment, hurling stones, calling them names. And the commanding officer of the armies gave the order, fix bayonets, charge. Well, the battle was on, and as you know, this resulted, just as your imagination can go, this resulted in the death, dismemberment, and injury of many. So the incident aroused such resentment that a provincial assembly was called in and called a meeting for the purpose of taking definite action. And two of the men were John Hancock and Sam Adams, two of the members of that meeting. Napoleon says, long live their names. They spoke up courageously and declared that a move must be made to eject all British soldiers from Boston. Napoleon says, remember this, a decision in the minds of two men might properly be called the beginning of the freedom that we of the United States now enjoy. Here he says, remember too, that the decision of these two men called for faith and courage, because it was dangerous, extremely dangerous. Think about the time. Think about when they were going directly against, this is treason. They're going directly against Great Britain. Think about it, man. But so the request was granted, the troops were removed, but the incident wasn't closed. It caused a situation destined to change the entire trend of civilization. So this guy named Richard Henry Lee, he becomes an important factor in this story by reason of the fact that he and Sam Adams communicated frequently. And Richard Henry Lee and Adams were sharing freely their frustrations and their fears of what was going on. They didn't like this at all. They wanted their freedom. So Adams presents this idea that we need to assemble everybody. We need to assemble the colonies. We need to assemble all the people to work in unison as one. Now we have organized planning, and now we have mastermind. We already had the desire for freedom. We're starting to develop the faith because people are repetitively being involved in it. So now we're starting to develop the faith because now people are being repetitively involved in the thought process of freedom. So we're developing this thing called faith. He says, mark well this incident. It was the beginning of the organization of the far-flung power destined to give freedom to all of us. He says, also mark well, the mastermind had been organized. It consisted of Adams, Lee, and Hancock. John Hancock is now in the mix. So if you remember, John Hancock was the big signature at the top of all the signatures on the Declaration of Independence. So this committee of correspondence is organized. The Americans and the colonies are at work. However, the British are not sitting around idle with their thumb up their butt doing nothing. Oh, gee, I wonder what they're up to. No, they're doing some organizing of their own. So they appoint this new leader, and this new leader is named Cornwallis. And Cornwallis's first job, and the first thing he wanted to do, was put down this uprising in Boston. So he offers bribes to everybody to set down their arms, and he would make sure that they would be taken care of. And he sent a message via messenger directly to Adams. And the message was very clear. It says, I have been authorized by Governor Gage to assure you, Mr. Adams, that the governor has been empowered to confer upon you such benefits as would be satisfactory upon the condition that you engage to cease in your opposition to the measures of the government. In other words, put your arms down, stop the uprising, and we will take very good care of you. It is the governor's advice to you, sir, not to incur the further displeasure of his majesty. So in other words, he's telling Adams that you're aggravating the people at the top. He says your conduct has been such as makes you liable liable to penalties of an act of Henry VIII by which persons can be sent to England for trial for treason or misprision of treason at the discretion of a governor of a province. By changing your political course, you will not only receive great personal advantages, but you will make your peace with the King of Kings. So Sam Adams had the choice of two decisions. He could cease his opposition, lay down his arms, take the personal bribes, or he could continue on and run the risk of being hanged. He was faced right then with an opportunity to make a quick, firm, definite decision. So what did he do? This is what he did. The majority of men would have found it difficult to reach this decision. Not this man. He insisted that Colonel Fenton would take this message back to Governor Gage. Governor Gage reported to Cornwallis. He insisted that this message be given to Governor Gage exactly as it's written. Then you may tell the Governor Gage that I trust I have long since my peace with the King of Kings. No personal consideration shall induce me to abandon the righteous cause of my country. And tell Governor Gage it is the advice of Samuel Adams to him, no longer to insult the feelings of an exasperated people. So in other words, if I'm not mistaken, reading between the lines, didn't Sam Adams tell Governor Gage to shove it in a very nice way? And I think that's what happened. Now, when Governor Gage received this reply, he flew into a rage and issued a proclamation which read, I do hereby, in the Majesty's name, offer and promise his most gracious pardon to all persons who shall forthwith lay down their arms and return to the duties of a peaceable nation, accepting only from the benefit of such pardon Sam Adams and John Hancock. See, he wanted Sam Adams, John Hancock, he wanted their heads on a platter now because they defied him, almost embarrassed him. Said, no, we're not doing that. We are not doing that. So they continued with their uprising. And as one might say, Adams and Hancock were on the spot. Well, great excitement followed. Great excitement. In some way, the possible consequences of such radicalism, some expressed grave doubt as to the wisdom to a definite decision in defiance of the crown. However, in that room were two men immune to that particular fear, blind to the possibility of failure, and that was Hancock and Adams. Those two guys. They controlled the environment through firmness and quickness of definite decision. They did not allow the environment to be controlled because of fear. Think about that for a minute, ladies and gentlemen. How true is that? He says, through the influence of their minds, the others were induced to agree. And through the Correspondence Committee, arrangements were made for a meeting of the First Continental Congress to be held in Philadelphia, September 5th, 1774. Remember that date, because there could be no declaration without that. There could be no Declaration of Independence without that date. If that decision to hold a Continental Congress hadn't been made, and action hadn't been taken, intelligent action hadn't been taken, there would be no Declaration of Independence at that time. He says, before the meeting of the first new Congress, another leader in a different section of the country was deep in the throes of publishing a summary rights of British America. That guy's name was Thomas Jefferson. You may know of him. If you don't, once again, look it up. You'll find fascinating what these people did and what they pulled off for the freedoms that you and I get to enjoy today. It truly is fantastic. So he was in Virginia. His relationship with his governor was no better than Samuel Adams and Governor Gage. It was definitely distorted and all messed up as well. But you have to understand that these men that didn't have a lot of power according to the great public, but they had the courage to make firm, definite decisions that gave us the freedom that we now live. So this First Continental Congress got together, and it continued over 2 years at intervals. And on June 7, 1776, Richard Henry Lee stands up, and he addresses the chair, and he says this: Gentlemen, I make the motion that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states. and they be absolved from allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. Lee's outstanding motion was discussed fervently and at such length that he began to lose patience. Napoleon says, finally, after days of negotiation, days of argument, he again took the floor and declared in a clear, firm voice, Mr. President, we have discussed this issue for days. It's the only course for us to follow. Why then, sir, do we delay longer? Why do we deliberate? Fear was in the minds of some of the people. Faith was overriding it, but fear was in the minds. What might happen if we don't win our freedom? Do we really want to go to war with Great Britain? They have all of the organized army and the machinery and the guns and everything. What do we have? Do we really want to do this? So, Thomas Jefferson is appointed to draw a draft of the Declaration of Independence. He's called back to Virginia in some illness in the family. So this document was drawn. And on June 28th, the original draft was read before the Congress. And for several days now, they discussed it, they altered it, and they made it ready. And then on July 4th, 1776, Thomas Jefferson stood before the assembly and fearlessly read the most momentous decision that has ever been placed upon paper. And then 56 men signed this document, which ensured either their death or our freedom. Now, I don't know about you. I have not had to make a decision today or in my lifetime that I'm aware of that had that much riding on one decision. So I ask you, how much courage has it taken for you to render the decisions that you have rendered today? Have your decisions been conditional decisions, or have they been committed decisions? Only you know that. As always, ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Joe. Without Joe, we wouldn't be here today. And Joe's a true inspiration and always has been since I met the man. He's been a wonderful inspiration for me. And if it weren't for Joe, we wouldn't be here. So thank Joe. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. As always, one of our greatest desires is that this day be the very best day you've ever experienced in this game we call life. Yesterday doesn't matter. It's ancient history. Tomorrow isn't here. You can't do anything about it. However, you can make a firm, committed, definite decision that this day will be and is the very best day you've ever experienced in this game we call life. Tonight, when you put your head on a pillow, please do so with a mind full of peace. Remember, calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. And may God bless each and every one of you. Have a great day.